Do you struggle with negative self-talk?
In today's episode of Training Tangents, we have our first guest, and we are going to be talking to Mr. Tom Kerensa about the things that are likely holding you back that you haven't necessarily considered. So, we're going to be delving into negative self talk and how to build self awareness around that, the things that will help you foster intrinsic motivation, and also helping you to find your own answers and build trust in yourself.
Let's get into the episode, shall we, Tom?
Let's go. Okay, so Tom, for someone who has never heard of you, what problem do you solve and for who?
Oh wow, what a question. For someone who's never heard of me, why not? And
I'm ashamed.
no, but seriously, why haven't you? Uh,
I have now.
I I help other people. I don't want this to sound wanky, but I support people to kind of find their own solutions to their problems. So I'm not coming as an expert in someone else's life. Although I do work as a doctor, I'm a GP. But quite often I see my role as actually helping people kind of rediscover the resources, the strengths, the talents, the insight that they have into themselves. I also work as a coach. I coach individuals and I coach teams. And that's what I would say.
Lovely. So I'm already very intrigued because you've said something that I love, that you want people to find solutions. One of the things that Tom and I talk about quite a lot with people, and I would love your insight on this, is one of the things that we really try to do as coaches is to try to nurture certain traits within people, one of them being problem solvers. So if someone came to you who was a new client and you wanted to work with you, like what would be the first steps you would take with them to really embrace that side of them?
Um, what would I do? I think actually the first thing I would do is really just to take a bit of time to get to know them. Because whenever you have any kind of connection with someone, whether they're walking in as a patient or as a client, and you jump straight into business, it can feel very transactional. So I think one of the best things that you can ever do is build rapport with someone. I actually don't think small talk is overrated. I think taking that time to build a relationship, build that connection is really important. And then in terms of that problem solving piece, um, I think we're all very different. I find quite often people can be their own worst critics, and you hear people kind of this inner narrative of, I'm not very good at that. I can't do that. And that might be why they're coming to you as a coach. So actually identifying areas, listening to their story, and actually identifying areas where they tell you that they did something, so you can highlight that competence back to them. It's really interesting that you said that you can't do that, but you've actually just told me in the same sentence, like, you achieved this. What do you think about that? So you're kind of actually like highlighting in a nice way, maybe that contradiction, and you're reaffirming their ability, their competence.
Yeah, I think based on conversations that we've had in the past, I would say you're excellent at listening and communicating in general. I think that's like genuinely like one of your biggest superpowers. And just like you say, sort of asking a question, just having that initial conversation. I think people often leave clues as to what's important to them, what kind of mental like state they're in, all of those things just from it, like in an initial conversation. I think one thing that you're excellent at doing is sort of picking up on those things as they're talking, and like you say, kind of tell me a little bit more about that, or sort of digging into those things. And I genuinely think that's sort of one of your biggest superpowers, and something that I've noticed when I've spoken to you in the past. Because just for like a bit of background, I used to coach Tom in the gym in Bristol, and until he moved over to Canada, where he is now. But we've kind of met up and we've had lots of conversations sort of in between those times. And like I said, just from the conversations we've had, I think that is genuinely what like one of your superpowers.
Thanks, man. I really, really appreciate that. And I would right back at you. I think you're exactly the same. My experience has always been that you're very curious, you're very patient. Ben, I would have loads to say about you. I would give you a click as well, but I haven't. By the end of the call, I'm going to tell you how amazing you are as well.
I'm happy. I'm happy right here within this Tom sandwich. Just the compliments. I'm loving that. And you know what? In a more serious note, I think, you know, empathy is one of the things that I think coaches should really look into more. I think coaches now are looking at how to be marketing, how to be marketers, how to get the most optimal session you can. But I think one of the things that really, how long have you been a coach for, Tom?
About
Tom?
5. Oh, sorry. You're talking to.
No. I know how long he's been coaching.
Oh, me.
We
Yeah, I've been doing about 6 years.
5. Yeah. So the average coach lasts about a year in the industry. I think the thing that sets people apart who last this long is that empathy. And you listen to how Tom was describing you, it sounds like you're a very empathetic person and a very good listener, and all those things I think are key. Like at the end of the day, I think the thing that really, I'd say, sets a good coach apart, and this is just my opinion, is that you actually give a shit about your clients. And from what Tom's just said about you, it sounds like the same thing. So do you think you've become a good listener? Do you think you've always been a good listener? Like, I love hearing people describing something as a trait that they like. I wear, like I could see the pride in you of like, I take that as a huge compliment. Is that something you've worked on? Is that something that's just naturally in you? Like, what do you think you got these abilities from? Or do you think it's just because this is just who you are as a person?
Well, I think there's a bit of both. It's something I've worked on. I as I said, I'm also a doctor. I've been doing that for nearly 15 years. Spent a lot of time working on communication, but I think it nurtured something that was already there. And what is that? I think it's just a genuine interest in people. Like I notice like I really come alive when I'm around other people. And I think whether you like self-identify as an introvert or an extrovert, I think every human on the planet is wired to connect socially. Like it's part of our brain, it's part of our physiology. And so when you find your people, like you feel it in your body. But for me, yeah, I totally agree with you, Ben, about the empathy piece. I think like you're right. Like coaches are doing these kind of courses about how to win more clients. Like when you notice language like that, I think you're already losing. I think it should be more about like how to genuinely and authentically connect with the human in front of you. Like that's what it is for me. And forget everything else. Like forget the outcome. Don't even worry about whether you're going to win this client or get money from it. Like just genuinely be there with the other human and the rest will take care of itself, in my opinion. Like you just need to show up as a normal, interested person.
Yeah,
I
I completely agree with
completely
that.
agree.
I think, yeah, I think being in the fitness industry and seeing what a lot of the kind of the mentors are promising, it is all about sort of winning clients and getting business and that sort of things. And obviously that's important because you've got to make a living from it. But actually, like if you're focusing on genuinely connecting and having a positive impact on people's lives, that's gonna get you that business anyway. And that's like I think probably one of the most underrated skills that like coaches kind of miss out on. But maybe this is just sort of from what I see, but it's like obviously fitness coaches is very heavily to do with obviously exercise mechanics and that side of things, which obviously is very, very important. But there's also the those kind of communication elements and actually like the connection elements, which are probably the thing that will end up getting the best results with people and helping them to like actually change behaviors going forwards, in my opinion.
Completely agree. Yeah.
One thing that me and Tom have spoken about previously, that I'd quite like you to touch on and talk about today, is positive psychology. Um, it's an area that I find really really fascinating. But for someone who hasn't heard of positive psychology, like what's the difference between that and sort of traditional psychology?
Yeah, it's a great question. I finished the masters last year in positive psychology, and it's honestly one of the best. Like, interestingly, compared to my medical degree, I was like, "Oh, this is fucking shit." No, no, I do like that still. I love it, but it was really, really fascinating for me, and as an adult learner. So traditional psychology has been around for hundreds of years. It's really about, understanding ourselves, our minds, and really it's looked a lot at the pathology end of the spectrum, the disease end of the spectrum, like what's wrong with us, the psychology of, like psychosis, mental disease, like anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, things like that. Um, Positive psychology has actually looked at the other side, and it's been around for about 25 or so years. Um, and there was a world conference of psychologists in, I think, in America, and in around the year 2000, and they kind of said, like, we've looked at the deficit, but what about when individuals and groups and societies thrive and flourish? What about when we focus and lean into, our strengths and our values and our virtues? And, what so that's essentially what positive psychology is. And it's not just about kind of looking at things through rose tinted glasses. It's not like, oh, let's be really optimistic about everything all the time. It still explores, like, some pretty, like, dark and painful and challenging parts of life, like post traumatic growth. Like, we all know that we go through really shit things in life. um, but like, as a phenomenon, like, actually exploring that, like exploring resilience, exploring, like, when you go through something really challenging and you come through the other side, what were the factors that supported that? Like, how did you do it? So I know that that was a bit of a wordy answer, but positive psychology is really about leaning into, what makes us kind of thrive.
Yeah, definitely. So
It's
it's
kind of
it's
like
almost like
reverse. Go
oh,
ahead. Tom.
sorry, mate. I was just going to say, so like my kind of understanding of it is like traditional psychology is more about sort of looking at where you've got weaknesses or what needs fixing or sort of that sort of things. Whereas and is I guess probably inherently more reactive. It's like you're looking at where you are now and looking at stuff that's gone on for you in the past and like, oh, like these are maybe some weaknesses you've got. This is sort of deficits, and by nature is probably like is a bit more of a negative way to look at things. Whereas like positive psychology is sort of like say on that other end of the spectrum. It's like, okay, I'm here now. Like, what stuff can I proactively do um, to like positively benefit myself and like so obviously there's a lot more to it than that, sort of digging into sort of resilience and those sort of elements. But for, like in terms of sort of if someone was interested in positive psychology and things that they can do, can you just give us a few examples of like areas kind of within that, or things that you might, or elements that you might look at?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons, but as we were talking, and the way that you just kind of eloquently described that, Tom, I was thinking, well, fixed and growth mindset are things that come up quite a lot. So and to the listeners, like, you might have heard these terms before, like growth mindset is quite a popular term. But fixed mindset is really like, just hearing yourself say, like, this is me, this is it. Like, I can't do anymore. You go into the gym or whatever, and you're just like, I can't do it. But growth mindset is actually seeing challenges as something that you can overcome. And actually using language and kind of reframing that. So that's kind of an example of positive psychology. Another one might be something like self determination theory. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but it's a theory of motivation, but there are three things that basically we look at. So it's things that would kind of help us thrive. So I talked about competence earlier. So recognizing, what you're good at, or recognizing what your client is good at. The other part is autonomy. So recognizing where we have choice. And in a world where we can sometimes feel completely overwhelmed by all of the different things that we're being confronted with, where do I have choice in this moment? Where do I have choice in this situation? And bringing it back to that. And with your client, in front of you, it might be like, rather than making them feel like this is being done to them, like, what do you want to work on today? Um, it's amazing how powerful that is for someone. Like, just that little moment of like, oh yeah, I've got a bit of control here. And the final piece of self-determination theory is relatedness, which is really about like, it's about social connection, but it's also about like, I belong, right? I feel like I belong in this situation. So it's competence, autonomy, and relatedness. So those are kind of three things. I mean, I can keep talking about other positive psychology things, but
Keep going. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. So you're talking about growth and fixed mindsets. If someone comes to you and is there certain things you can tell that would give away whether someone is more of a growth? Because in my personal opinion, I think no one is one or either. I think you're kind of mixes of both in certain degrees.
mm,
One of the cool things for us as coaches is showing people that the things they thought they were fixed on, actually they're not. Is there any circumstances you can think of that you've had with clients where they've gone from believing themselves to be, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, and then you've actually shown them like, hey, actually, this is what you're capable of doing, and then kind of breaking that. I think it's such a satisfying moment when that identity just breaks away. Is there any examples you can think of with clients that you've really seen that happen that you take? Because there's some clients I think all of us can share that, we've been coaching a long time. There's certain clients that stick out in your head that you're like, I, I am so proud of this. Is there any that you can think of in that context of where you took them from to here?
well, one thing that's kind of coming up for me, because there are a lot of parallels for me. Like my main job is working as a doctor, and I speak to thousands of people like every year about various things, like a lot of health behaviors. And one tool, I don't know if you guys have heard of motivational interview.
Yeah.
It's basically communication model that focuses on behavior change. So you really kind of, there are lots of different like parts to it, but one thing is about listening to sustained talk, which is where somebody would say like, is pretty much fixed mindset, like, yeah, I definitely can't do that. Like, there's no way I could ever do that. And then also listening out for change talk, because as you said, Ben, like, you do hear people say, if you're listening carefully enough, you'll hear them say like, well, maybe I could do it because I've done it in the past. Like, I did it like a couple of years ago. And that's where like really being empathetic and like tuning in is important. And so, we might use it. Like, a lot of people come to me, I want to give up smoking. I want to cut down on my alcohol consumption. I want to work on my diet. So that comes into my kind of consult room a lot. Um, and I do exactly what I was talking about earlier. Like, I notice those pieces and I remind them, it's like, it's really funny that you said that you can't, like, you can't work on your diet because you just told me, 3 times you've actually managed to lose weight. Like, what happened there? Like, why were you, like, how were you successful before? And then they're like, well, yeah, what was different about that time? Well, I was actually like really dialed in, and I was sleeping really well, and I actually like wrote things out, and I wrote my why out, and I was really clear on this or that. So I think actually just like, for me, like, one of the because I actually teach a lot of coaching skills as well. Like, one of the things I say to people is like, never underestimate the power of presence. And that sounds like really simple, but just being like super, super present with another person, like noticing their body language, like, how are they acting in that moment? Notice when they come alive, like, notice when they shut down. if they're talking about something, like that's an emotional response, that's a cue. Like you see their face just kind of go down. Like, and you can, and if there's enough safety in that moment, you can reflect that back to them. Like when you were talking about, kind of going, exercising more, I noticed that like you kind of shut down a little bit. Like what's going on for you there? Or like the converse, like when you started talking about like running or like doing that 10K at the weekend, like you completely like your face just like lit up. Like what? Yeah, tell me more. So I feel like
Love that.
I've gone off on a tangent, but maybe I've met the brief.
Oh, oh, he
You
said it. He
nailed it,
said it.
mate.
Yes. Love that. You're hitting on something that I strongly believe in, and I've set up my entire coaching business based off of the things that you're kind of mentioning. Of like, I know my strengths, I know what I'm not so good at, and I lean into the things I'm good at. One of them is I speak to every single one of my clients, and a lot of the time is we work out what they need to do, and then once we've worked out what they need to do from a coaching perspective, it's just a chat. I take a lot of pride in one of my clients said to me is like having, and it this sounds like blowing my horn, but you know what? I'm going to do it because it's something I'm extremely proud of the fact that they said this. They said it's like having the type of best friend that everyone needs. That's what it's like working with me. It's like I want them to do well. I want them to do well. I want them to be successful, but I'm also there to remind them, hey, look, if this is where you want to go, this is not the way to do it. And that's to me, that's what you want in a best friend. And I think that's a part of coaching that's kind of being not lost. I don't because there's always going to be people here, but it's not talked about that much. It's always about results, physical results, like how shredded can someone get. To
Mm,
me, cool, great, well done. Not taking anything away from that, but to me, it's how did we get there? Like,
mm,
are you happy with where you are, or to be more accurate, are you content with where you're at? And that to me is more important. And you said this earlier. You come alive when people are there. I don't know if you've ever been like this. You kind of been like exhausted before you see a client, and then as soon as they turn up, oof, you just come to life. And that's what I found. And that's what I've lent into for 10 years of online coaching now. It's just nice to hear someone else saying the same thing. And this the body language you pick up, as you're saying, people's heads drop, they close in. When you talk about something they love, you do really notice everything changes in someone. It's amazing to see. And it's just cool to hear that. So
mm.
talking about physical change, Tom, you had a question about the physical changes, like talking about physical results, which I really want to hear Tom's opinion on this. So Tom, you got the question for him there? The people focusing on physical
Yeah.
results?
So obviously, like within the fitness industry, like it's the main thing that people focus on from a training perspective is the physical result they're getting from that. Like they're getting stronger, they're getting fitter, they're dropping a certain amount of body fats, etc. But like we know the benefits go far deeper than that. Like in your opinion, from like your experience, why do you think so many people feel mentally and psychologically better when they train consistently?
Hmm, that's a really good question. Well, I think you can look at it like in the short term, why do they feel better in the moment? And there's so much there. So, like Ben, you just talked about like, by the way, that's an amazing compliment. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you're proud of that one. That's super cool. But like, yeah,
Thank you.
like if you have a coach that you genuinely like like there's that social connection piece. um so I think that's part of why you feel better in the moment in the short term when you're training. um I think that it kind of comes back to what I was saying earlier. There's something about like competence. So just showing up to the session even when you feel like shit, and you actually do it, and then after the fact you're like, yeah, fuck yeah. I did something hard today. I can feel good about that. Um, yeah, and I think over time, there's actually something about like recognizing where you were and then where you are now and that growth. And I think again, that's like part of the role, or like a good coach will actually highlight those pieces to their client. you know, and especially on like challenging days where they're just like, you know, like I didn't do that like squat today, or like I couldn't lift that, or whatever it is, just being like, fair. Like I totally see where, you know, you're feeling a little bit kind of bad about that, but can I just mention a couple of things? Like, you know, you said that you wanted to like do, like, you know, get a better time on your 10K. You said that you wanted to do this. Like you've actually achieved all of those things. So like, I totally accept that today wasn't, you know, your best, but let's zoom out. Let's look at the bigger picture. And I think that's really important as well. So I think there's
Yeah,
kind of like in the moment, short term, and there's also like the bigger picture as well. Just like one final piece, like whatever anybody's doing, whether it's focusing on a training goal or literally anything in life, I always kind of ask them why, because you really want to tune into their motivation and get really clear. Like, I've noticed, like I've done a couple of like, yeah, like kind of big physical things over the past couple of years. Like I ran my first marathon, and I needed to think about like why I wanted to even train for it, because it's fucking grueling. And if you
valid question. Valid question.
if you don't have a why for something, I think most people will give up at some point. They'll give up pretty quickly. And so asking your clients like, that's really cool that that's your goal. Like, what's your motivation for that? And I know, Tom, you're amazing at this. Like just asking people like, okay, you want to train? Like, and yeah, it's because I want to be able to play with my kids. I don't want to be like really achy, and, you know, I want more physical freedom, and, you know, so I think that's important.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've nailed it there, and it's something that I talk about sometimes as well. Is like people see that sort of the result, like the physical result, but like you say, either side, you've got the acute short-term benefits, like you'll be in a better mood, your energy will be better, you'll just feel better in yourself for having done something physically active on that day. And then also sort of like that the long-term piece of like say they might not feel great in that moment, but if they reflect and look back over the last like couple of weeks, months, or even years, and sort of comparing sort of that journey and seeing that progression, that I think that's a really cool thing. And I actually, one of my clients actually put in his check-in form this week about a couple of years ago when he was kind of first starting his journey. He was like walking up this hill, and it was like a bit of a workout. And he said he saw someone cycle up it, and he's like, "Oh my god, that guy's so fit." And then last week he cycled up it, towing both of his children and a backpack on. And I was like,
Well,
"Oh, that is
Yes,
that's just wicked."
that's
it's
amazing.
amazing. Whoever it is, well done. That's
You're a
amazing. Like,
legend.
it's so cool. So cool seeing someone do something that they thought was never going to be for them. Like
Yeah.
that's one of the coolest moments. Like client Dave helps us a lot on the podcast and proof listens to all this stuff. So again, shout out to Dave. I remember him. He's been doing pull-ups, full body weight pull-ups. And he said to me, this was something I always saw people doing that and thought that's never going to be for me. No, he's banging them out. Like no problem. It's just such a cool thing to see someone just shatter what they thought they were and then go, well, what else can I do? What else can I do? But one of the most important elements that is consistency. And it's never sexy. It's never a sexy thing to say, but consistency is arguably a huge part of this puzzle. So Tom, when people are like struggling with consistency, what are some of the things you would try and encourage them to look at, or how would you approach that with someone who is really struggling with consistency?
Hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I will just say this: like my approach as a coach would be to kind of first unpack what somebody means by, if they said to me, I'm struggling with consistency, I would say, what do you mean? Okay, does that mean, you know, that you're not turning up to sessions? You know, you're not coming, like tell me more. And then I'd kind of explore that with them, like, why is it hard? Because, you know, it's really easy for us to kind of one thing as well, like I think great coaches don't do the heavy lifting. And I know that's gonna sound like crazy, but like if you kind of take a step back and you let the client or support the client to do the work, like you actually, I don't mean this in a lazy way. You don't actually have to work as hard, but also like it's much more fulfilling for that client because they've actually solved their own problems with their own inner wisdom. But I would kind of ask them, like you said that you're feeling inconsistent. What does that mean? Kind of explore the barriers, and then you can kind of overcome those. Um, yeah, but I totally agree with you. Like it doesn't feel sexy, but it's so important.
Huge,
To
huge. Like,
what? Yeah.
do you find that, I think you touched upon this earlier, but I just want to dig in a little bit deeper. Do you find that people are naturally harder on themselves than they need to be? Because that's something I found so frequently with clients is they're so quick to jump on the thing that they didn't do. So for example, I didn't get my training session in, or I haven't been training as regularly as I would like to have been.
Mm,
And that's all they focus on.
mm,
But then you can go, well, let's look at everything else. We know that training is what? 1 hour, a 1 hour training session is less than 4% of your day. In a 24-hour clock, it's 4%. What we really should be focusing on is the 96. But everyone focuses on that one thing they didn't do rather than all the things they've been doing well. It's like, okay, well, did you stop tracking or assessing your food? No, you did that well. It's amazing how much as coaches we need to just, as you said earlier, kind of take a step back. I always call it first person view. A lot of people live in this first person, like very reactive, and then the third person view, which people really struggle to snap into of like, how am I interacting with everything around me? And I think our jobs as coaches is to, it feels like it for me anyway, and you guys can speak on this, but we have to constantly pull people out of their own heads and be like, hey, look at all the things you're doing
yeah.
that, yes, you maybe didn't get training session in, but let's put that into perspective of how important that is. You didn't not train because you couldn't, or because you chose not to. Something came up. That's why you didn't train. But look at all the other things that you didn't abandon. Like, do you feel that people are a little bit more inclined to beat themselves up? Because that's what I feel sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know about you two, but I certainly am.
Yeah.
That's another thing. I'm always vulnerable, and like I always share a little bit of my own stuff and story with my clients, because I think that that's really powerful, because modeling that fallibility as a coach makes you more relatable, makes you more human. People don't want to come to you and feel like they're just talking to someone who's like fucking perfect. That is really alienating. They want to know that you're human as well. So always vulnerable. By the way, there's no implication that I think I'm perfect. Just for you to listen. Yeah, it's not okay. Like,
Don't worry, mate. We did get that.
yeah,
Did
yeah.
we find the perfect human here?
Ah, okay.
We did it.
So,
No, I love that you said that as well. That you talk. I think there's this idea that as coaches we're up here commanding down, but I hate that idea. I hate the idea that people think that we're up here. I try to make sure that they know, hey, look, I'm not above you here. I'm just further along this path, and there's been pitfalls that I don't want you to fall into because I've fallen in myself. Like
yeah.
we can all agree as coaches, like if we were able to coach ourselves when we started at our point now, we would probably have gotten to where we are today in a
Mm,
quarter of the time, probably even better than that. But I love the fact that you said that the ability to connect. Like you want to get, when you're taking advice from someone and someone's come to you for advice, they
mm,
want to understand like, hey, he has an idea of what this is like. And again, a lot of the things are parallel. It's very rare that we share the exact same things with our clients are going through. We
mm,
can we can definitely empathize and be like, hey, look, I'm not in your situation, but this is a situation I went through. This is what I did. If there's anything you can take from that, I will do my best to help you with that. But I love the fact that you mentioned that this idea of, it's not up here, down to here. It's just further along the path, and all you want for them is to get to where you are. Because to me, I said this from back when I was pretty much a kid. I was doing it's the Men's Health cover model magazine, and they asked me a question. It's like, what would you want to get out of this? And it was like, if one person with CF sees this and goes, maybe I can do it. That's it. I was like, I'm happy. That's all that would mean the most to me in the world. The fact that I'm just doing what I do and looking after myself, and someone else go like, oh, maybe I can do that too. And that's to me, one of the coolest things that we can experience as coaches as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's like it ties into what you're saying earlier about the self-determination theory, like and that sort of relatedness piece. Because I think, like you say, a lot of people are consuming media and seeing sort of people who are like the optimizers or like are pushing sort of optimal all the time, and they think that's what they have to do, and think that they're failing if they're not doing that. Whereas actually, like you say, sort of having that sort of relatedness makes it a lot more motivated for them, because they're like, actually, I don't need to be perfect. I can just go and do this, and I can do it. I can do it at my own pace. And obviously, something we chatted very briefly about before this podcast was the Stephen Bartlett podcast clip that's kind of going around at the moment, where he talks about how he had 3 glasses of wine and it ruined the next 3 days of his life. And I think that was genuinely like how he phrased it. But for you, Tom, like how does sort of media like that kind of show up in your work and sort of people's perceptions when you're kind of talking to them from a coaching perspective?
And I really want to answer your question, and I want to also, just because I realized, like, Ben, you asked me about like people being their own worst critic, and I wanted to make sure I kind of acknowledged that. Yeah, that comes up all the time, and I think we're all our own worst critics. And what I highlight to people is that when I hear that voice coming into the room, and I ask them, how does it make you feel when that voice comes out? You know, how are you feeling right now? How motivating is that? Like, is it 100% true what you're saying? Like, you know, I'm fucking shit, or whatever they say. Like, I just kind of ask them, and then, you know, ask them, help them identify another perspective, maybe someone that they value the opinion of, that they care about, maybe like one of you two, or like, what would I say to you in that moment if you were on your own and you heard that voice coming into your mind, and you know it was being like very self-critical and harsh and self-flagellating? Like, what do you think I would say to you in that moment? Like, how would I talk to you? How would your partner talk to you? How would your best friend talk to you? Would you use that same voice if you were talking to your kid? You very likely wouldn't. You wouldn't talk to them in that way. And then just recognizing, you know, another piece I say to them is like, we learn to be very self-critical. I think it's something we pick up in society, but, you know, just bring it back to what took a bit of time, energy, or effort today, you know, to build that, to build up that kind of bank of like stuff that makes you feel good about yourself, rather than focusing on like that tiny moment of like whatever. So I just wanted to acknowledge that because you asked me that question. And then Tom, you were also kind of talking about, yeah, I was chuckling.
Stephen,
I was chuckling because I've seen so many videos just like ripping Stephen Bartlett for being like,
I'm completely oblivious to this, so I don't know. So I'm curious. So he said he had 3 bottles of wine and it
No,
ruined
three,
the
three,
next
three,
3
no,
days.
not 3 bottles,
it was like,
three glasses.
As you can tell, I don't drink, so bottles, glasses, same thing. So he had 3 glasses of wine.
you're like 3 gallons of wine.
Yeah, 3 tankards. That's it. It's all a drink.
Love
If
it.
it can fit in something and I can tip it to my face, it's a drink.
Barrel.
Kegs. That's it.
But he was basically saying, it and I think like there are a lot of parts to this, but he was basically saying like, I had 3 glasses of wine, and then just kind of going down this like talking about the consequences for him. You know, like basically, you know, my entire day was ruined, and then my entire week was ruined, and then he was like, you know, and then I had a terrible podcast, and this and that. And I think for me, it represents like a bigger thing. I was just saying to Tom, like, I saw Jamila Jamil use this term health maxing, and I was like, oh, interesting. But I think that in the pursuit of trying to be healthy, we can fall to one end of the spectrum. Like, I think we can either be, you know, there's no judgment, by the way. I'm never like, with my clients and my patients, I'm never like, I'm not judging you for your habits. I'm just like noticing what you're doing. But like, you could be at one end of the spectrum where you don't do anything, you don't get off the couch, you don't move, you eat whatever you want, whenever you want. That's fine if that's what you want to do. And then there's another end of the spectrum where I think you can optimize like every single piece of like, you know, you're wearing your Whoop, you're looking at your sleep, you're looking at, you know, like how many steps did I do today? Like, and so I think what I was noticing with that video is that there are a lot of people with big platforms and, you know, very influential voices who might be kind of quite polarized and presenting something to people that is quite extreme. And for me, I always listen to the people that really impact me the most. So the ones that are nuanced, the ones that are balanced, the ones that show up as, like we were talking about, normal, everyday human beings. Because fucking hell, that's what we all are. We're just human. So I think that's what it was. Just the, you know, just this very extreme, like, and also what you've got to ask yourself, like, okay, if you're maxing like every single thing in your life, to what end? And what are you actually missing out on? You know, if you say that you're not going to go to the birthday party and you're not going to eat any cake because ever, because you want to be like, you know, 5% body fat, what are you missing out on?
Life, basically, isn't it? Like that's it. Like I said, that you know, I always try to get people to. I find clients can lean a bit more towards that way of thinking, of the kind of all or nothing mentality of the perfectionist, and this is one of the first things I try to really deconstruct with people, of stop listening to that mentality. If someone says to me, I'm an all or nothing person, I'm like, so you do nothing? That's
Yeah.
because this idea of being perfect, if they're not, you know, we always go with this like, oh, 100%. If you, and I always try to get back to them in really practical ways of like, look, if you got 80%, 70% on a test, you've done well. You've passed that test. Most tests have a pass rate of 70%. I've not done a test in many, many years, thank goodness. But 70%, you put any context of that, of like, hey, 70%, that's the majority. You know, you said this earlier. People try to be perfect. Realistically, the average person just needs to be good. The
Mm.
people who need to be perfect are like Olympic athletes. And Tom, I'm sure some have spoken to Olympic athletes. I had the pleasure of speaking to one many years ago. And I asked them, hey, what's your life like? And what they described seemed so detached from humanity
Mm.
that it sounded like torture. And yet that's what people think is needed to get to that level. Like everything's weighed out, the timing, everything is spot on. When they train, what they've eaten before they train, the music they listen to, how much water they've had. I'm like, that is so, we don't need to do that. That is so at this end of the spectrum.
Mm.
They need to do that because they are looking for the 0.01% improvement that could give them the position of gold or silver. That's really what's in it.
Mm.
When everyday humans take that mindset, and they've already got jobs that they need to be concerned about, kids they need to be concerned about, parents they need to be worried about, siblings, all those things, you're like, hey, look, you're setting yourself up to fail immediately. And
Mm.
I think that's such a big thing. So how would you tackle someone who is coming to you with that all or nothing mindset? What's the kind of, do you try to deconstruct it? Like what way do you go about kind of talking to someone about that?
Hmm. Well, I think that's basic. Like that's it, Ben. You know, I'd kind of um, I'd highlight that piece to them. You know, I'm noticing like this, you know, you're in or you're out, like this all or nothing mindset. Um, and just explore that with them. Like, what are the consequences of that? You know, firstly, like, it's so important to tune into how something makes someone feel, and that's either a physical sensation in their body. I think one thing that I've spent so much time studying psychology, and I think we're really cognitive creatures, and one of the most amazing things about humans and that sets us apart from other species is our intelligence. But we're really head focused, and this will, I think, resonate with both of you because you're such physical people. But there are lots of humans who are really disembodied in the sense that they're really disconnected from their bodies, and they lose that physical intuition. They forget there's not a judgment, because I've definitely been there, just what it feels like to notice a physical sensation in your body, and that includes emotions. And these are the things that drive our behavior as well. Like when you feel an emotion, when you feel sad, when you feel joyful, and then you feel energized, you're more likely to do something. So I always ask someone how does that make you feel? When you hear that all or nothing mindset, how does that make you feel in your body? And then what do you want to do? And they're well, actually, I just feel completely overwhelmed. When I have that all or nothing mindset, I feel just, yeah, just I don't even know where to begin, because, I realize that, I can't do everything, and it feels like a lot. And so I actually end up doing nothing. Oh, that's really interesting that you said that. So you kind of focus on this perfectionistic outcome. You realize that you can't achieve perfection, and that makes you feel demotivated, and then you just give up anyway. What sense do you make of that? So yeah, that's kind of how I'd approach it. And then just what you were talking about earlier, what would be good enough? In that's a question I keep coming back to with clients. What would be good enough today? What would be good enough in this moment? Because your energy levels, your emotions, they change moment to moment, day to day. And yesterday you might have been firing on all cylinders, at peak efficiency, and you might have been able to do much more than you can in this moment right now. So I'm just what is within your capacity in this moment right now, and what would be good enough?
Love
I think
that.
that's a
Love
really,
that.
yeah, really nice way to look at it. And obviously, what you're talking about is sort of just starting to build a base level of self awareness, both physically, but also sort of mentally and emotionally as well. Um, Obviously, you've spoken about sort of how you would kind of approach a conversation around that. But is there anything else that you would potentially if someone was interested in sort of developing a bit more kind of self awareness, how would you sort of potentially approach that? Is there anything that the people listening to this today can kind of can go away and do? Is there anything that you kind of do around that?
That's an interesting question. I think one of the things that comes to mind is just maybe a little bit of mapping out and getting a bit of perspective. So if you wanted to notice how you respond to certain situations, especially if you feel that they're problematic, right? We're unlikely to do it if we feel like it's achieving a great outcome. But um, I just this is just a random example, but if you're thinking about kind of work conflict or something like that, I always get in arguments. Um, you could write down, um, and this, by the way, is kind of coming from something like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is um, been around for decades, but it's basically about what you um, think and what you do affects how you feel. And you can't always influence how you feel, but you can kind of change to an extent your thinking and your behaviors, and in doing so, kind of change how you feel. So what I would say to people is that you could map it out. You could write event. Sally came up to me. Fucking Sally. Sally.
Goddamn, Sally.
And made him. I threw my toys out the pram, and I stormed out, and just basically like mapping out, the event or the situation, and then, maybe thoughts that you had, and then feelings that you had. And the reason why that might sound like a little bit granular and like analytical, but it can help to give you a bit of perspective and actually just to step back from the situation. Because I think, especially for me, like sometimes I'm just in the moment. Like when I feel angry or I'm seeing reds, like I'm just in it. Like I can't get any kind of perspective at all on a situation. And you could definitely use this for your like clients, who feel a certain emotion, or you were talking about consistency earlier, Ben. Like you could get them to kind of map it out a little bit. And I always say to people, like, don't spend a lot of time doing this. Spend like 3 minutes, time it. Just do something really tiny. Just scribble it out on a piece of paper. I bet you by the end of that exercise, you'll have a bit more perspective. And then you recognize like situations where you feel a certain way, which might lead to you feeling demotivated, or you recognize situations where you came alive and you felt motivated. So I think I just asked them to do that like tiny little task.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I really like you said that about just like set a timer for 3 minutes, because I think a lot of the time these sort of tasks can feel really overwhelming and almost add to the overwhelm that people already feel around, like, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. Like, cool, just set that timer. You like, everyone's got 3 minutes. Just go, like, set that timer and just go and do it. I think using that approach can be really helpful for like actually gaining consistency on something like that. Because obviously, like, if that's something that, if you're struggling to get consistency and there's something holding you back, then building up, like, there could be multiple reasons, but having self-awareness around how you're feeling and how you're behaving as a result is likely to help you resolve that and get, like, move forwards or towards the result that you want to get.
100%.
Um,
So, in I'm trying to think of, so when it comes to the people you deal with the most in a coaching capacity, what do you feel like are some of the most common stumbling points or problems that you see arising over and over and over again? You know, when someone says it, you're like, okay, well, yeah, I've been through that, I've been down this path. Is there anything that you can think of that is maybe more prevalent in people that they maybe think is unique to them? Because that's one of the things that you just, you kind of, I say it to coaches or to my clients all the time. It's like, we think we're these special snowflakes. Truth is, we're not. Most of the problems we've had, other people have been through. I mean, you go on the internet and you think, oh, this is this one unique thing that I think is to me, and then you see someone's made specifically a reel about how they feel the same way. And you're like, okay, we're not these special snowflakes. Is there anything that you have come across that you're like, wow, that's showing up very regularly in people's mindset when it comes to progression or anything like that? I know it's a bit of an open-ended question, but is there anything you're seeing like, it's showing up quite a lot? Like self-doubt is one of the ones,
Mm.
just as an example. Like self-doubt, like people genuinely don't realize what they're capable of doing. And our job as coaches is to, like, okay, baby steps. Let's get you to where you need to be. Is there any other kind of patterns that you've noticed in a more psychological way?
Mm. I think, as you were asking me that, Ben, I was just thinking, this might be an interesting one for, a lot of coaches, is actually like starting right at the beginning with your client. Like, you think you know why they've come to you. You might have this belief or assumptions about why this person has come to train with you, but unless you get curious about that, and actually maybe they don't even know. So like, I know you're asking me like common things that come up, but I'm always like, firstly, what does coaching represent for you? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to you? And let's unpack some bits. Like another thing, like you might hear this quite a lot. People will be like, "You're the expert. and this is being essentially like this is being done to me. But you talked about, Ben, like earlier, kind of having that like level playing field where you're kind of I'm not up here and you're down here, and that's the hierarchy piece, right? And that kind of plays out in so many social situations, like so many groups where people like either they take on a role or a position. You're the expert, you know everything, like you're telling me what to do. But how disempowering is that for someone to be in that position? So just naming that right from the start, before I even get into any kind of coaching with people, I talk about the dynamics. Like this is a oh fuck, Tom Tom was bored, he left.
It's me and you. Keep going. Yeah, no, I'm all ears.
Like this just kind of talking about like this is a relationship. You're getting into a relationship with that client. Like what do we want it to look like? Let's
Yep.
set some parameters, let's set some boundaries, like like how do we want to communicate? If you don't show up, you talked about consistency earlier, how would you like
Mhm.
me to respond to that? How would you like me to would you like me to keep you accountable? And what does that actually look like? Do you want me to pick up the phone and be like, where the fuck are you? Or,
Where are you, bro? Yep, yep. I
or
think I think you're. Go ahead. Go
no,
ahead.
no, no, what you go ahead.
So I think you're right. I you mentioned this earlier about kind of lazy approach to coaching, but I completely agree with you. I think that we should be empowering the people we're working with, that
Mm,
they shouldn't always be looking to us for answers. Because
mm,
one of the framing techniques I use with a lot of clients is, if this was your best friend, if your friend knew everything that was going on, which nobody knows what's going on with everybody, but let's just pretend in this situation that everything you're going through right now, your best friend is going through it.
mm,
What advice would you give them?
mm,
And then they can kind of start working it out themselves, and that it kind of, it puts us in the back seat, and it kind of, as you said earlier, it takes us away from this, like, without me, you couldn't be where you are today. And that's one of the things I say to my clients all the time. Hey, look, you did this. In fact, I sent a message to one of my clients today. He has had I mean, the difference in him is night and day. It's one of the coolest things. And it gets me so amped up. But I messaged him saying, you did this. You were the one that got yourself to the gym. You were the one that decided to make a plan. You were the one that cooked your food. I wasn't there. I didn't do this. Yes, I maybe provided a framework, and I kind of fenced off this area so that you can explore that. But ultimately, you did this. And, giving them back that sense of control by framing it as like, hey, your best friend comes to you with this issue.
mm,
What advice would you give them? And I just let them talk. I just let them kind of find their way. And I'm like, it's in there. Now we just need to do what we all struggle with, is take our own advice. Like, I think we all struggle with that. Of like, hey, I can tell you, do this, do this, do this,
mm.
but I'm going to do all this stuff. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people struggle with, is take themselves out of the situation. As I call it, snap into the kind of like third person mode. There
Mm,
he is.
mm.
And be like, right, how am I responding?
That's
What
great.
way am I interacting? And, it's all good. It's all good. We kept it going. So yeah, I think that framing, of what advice would you give your best friend if they're in the situation, is something I use quite a lot. Is that something you ever use, or is that like a frame? Like, have you got any other like framing techniques that you would potentially use with people who are struggling?
Yeah, I love that. It's such a powerful question because psychologically what you're doing is like you're helping put people to step outside of the dominant perspective they see or the lens that they look at things through. Another one is using time. Yeah, I think this is really powerful. And I wonder if you two already do this, but like, um, if you were 90 and you were on your deathbed and you're looking back at your life and you feel like really genuinely grateful and positive and good about everything that you're reflecting on, like, what would you have done? Like, how would you have lived your life? And it just helps people to kind of, yeah, like, yeah, zoom
Zoom
out
out.
Exactly,
Yeah.
zoom out. I think that's really important. Um, but you know, you asked me, Ben, like just to briefly bring it back to the question, like about what are the kind of common threads or things that people come to me with, and yeah, maybe like this is not what you expected me to say, but uncertainty about what coaching is. That comes up all the time, and I actually think that's a really good piece to tune into as coaches. Like, I think like that's a really fucking brilliant thing. Like, before you even get into anything, like I'm going to give you these exercises or whatever to do. Like, why are you here? What do you think this is? And what do I think this is? And that's just a brilliant like place to start the journey.
Love that. Absolutely love that.
Yeah,
Tom,
wicked.
welcome back again.
Thank you. My Wi-Fi dropped out. I was worried that the whole chat had gone, but luckily it hadn't.
We got
I
it.
hope I haven't missed the would you rather.
We have not. Have we
Oh,
got? Have we got? Let me see. Have you got one? We can.
I've got a good one. I've got a good one. Are you ready,
Okay,
Tom?
excellent, excellent.
Brilliant.
Every episode, we usually ask each other, what would you rather? So, Tom, let's
Yeah.
go. You don't usually ask them. I'm
No,
excited for
no.
this one. Okay, go for it.
Would you rather have a sing off with Ariana Grande or dance off with Rihanna?
Well, I don't think you heard me sing when we were in Portugal, Tom.
It was impressive. You missed it, Tom.
Right. I am fucking amazing at singing. No, that's a really hard one. That's a really hard one. I obviously I would be like shit in comparison to both of those women, but
I
what was,
I'd
You
back
got
you.
to pick
I'd
one,
back
though.
you in a dance off, mate. I think.
oh man, I think I
See,
I think I would do the dance off with Rihanna.
Yeah.
yeah.
Just because I
What
love
shapes are you throwing? Are you a boxy person? Can you throw a robot?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's all you need to do.
do.
That's it. Oh, there you, nah, yeah. Cracked it.
you're like
Cracked it.
Rihanna. I'm gonna fly. You'll get
Over to you,
this
Rihanna.
one back.
Oh,
Oh, just before we actually did this, so a very, very like brief story. So we went, we spent New Year's in a place called Roseland in Canada, and we were in this bar. I was with my husband and our best friends, and there was this really like sweet old lady, and she was like sitting in the corner, and they playing some like absolute bangers, like you know, like Sash and just like stuff from like the 90s and noughties, and we were just like being really silly with the dancing. And I noticed that she couldn't get up and she couldn't dance. So like my friend Mitch and I went over and we were like, but like really, really drunk. Like, I got her to like do the dancing with us. So we're like, okay, deal the cards, the cards. Run, celebrate. And she's like, woo! I 30 minutes. So then at the end, we had like a little hug, and she was like, oh my God, I've had the best night. And I was like, me too.
Oh,
So
mate,
I
nothing better.
think I
sounds like
could
you
make
made the new year.
I think I could make Rihanna laugh. I think I'd be really good at dancing with her.
Yeah.
I mean, based off what I've seen in this rectangle, I don't doubt that either, Tom, to be honest. I really don't. So we have one last question to wrap this up. So are you familiar with the idea of a loading screen from a game? When you're loading into a video game, you get that little bit of text at the bottom that usually gives you some advice. Let's imagine that life is a video game. What piece of advice or tip would you want to see coming up in that little loading screen?
Don't take life too seriously. You're not getting out alive.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Nice.
Tom, absolute legend. I thank you so much for your time. Again, we have to appreciate how early it is for you. The fact that you're able to string a sentence together at that time of the day is not something I'd be capable of doing. So thank you so much for your time, Tom. It's been an absolute pleasure. And
Yeah, and that's been wicked.
now I know you very, very well. And I really appreciate it.
And for the guys who potentially want to know more about you or know about your coaching, like where would they find you?
Such a good question, because I've become a bit of a social media recluse. That I can give you my email address. Yeah,
Cool.
Tom Kerensa coaching at gmail.com. If anyone wants to,
Cool.
for me, I'm happy to chat.
We'll link it in
We'll link that.
in the show notes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Tom, again, thank you so much. Lovely to get to know you. Again, it's been fantastic to talk to someone who is this dialed in so many elements that I personally value so much in coaching. It's just great to know there's other coaches out there who value the same things. And, it's just great to be around people who are like-minded, and I massively appreciate it. It's good to know you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank you
much
so
for your
much for your time, mate. And thank you for being the first guest on the Training and Tangent podcast.
Yeah.
Fuck yes.
and for doing Big Fish, Little Fish cardboard box. I wasn't expecting that, but I'm so glad
That's
it
a
happened.
first. That's a
Hey,
first.
I'm gonna see you at Bristol. I'm gonna see you on my terrible. Thank you very much, boys. It's honestly been a brilliant start to the day. Like, really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you.
Awesome.
Appreciate it, Tom.
Good, mate.
Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
And we will see you soon. Have a good one.
Bye.